Hello everyone, welcome to yet another edition of askST at NLB. This project is done with collaboration with the National Library Board. In normal times, we are actually speaking to you live at the National Library. But now, even though we are doing here virtually, we will still answer and discuss questions and provide the insights that is important to you. So today, we are going to talk about something that is of utmost importance, financial security. Okay, what is it that we are going to touch on? You see, retirement planning is already tough enough. So what we shouldn't want to do would be to allow scammers to run away with your hard-earned money. Today, for this episode, we have invited a very special guest, cybersecurity expert Mr. Anthony Lim, a fellow from Singapore University of Social Sciences, where he will shed some light on what scammers do and how we avoid them. Mr. Lim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ewan. Good afternoon to you, and I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, to start off, we started the year with quite a big bang, and we have 970 people who fell prey to this phishing scam involving OCBC Bank, where a total of $13.7 million were lost. You see, the funny thing is that most of these scams are not new. So, Anthony, why do you think people still fall for them?
Well, you're right. The scams are not new, and only the technology maybe is new, or the methods or the ideas right now. Like in the past, there was no blockchain or Bitcoin, whatever. So the subject matters are new, but the concepts are not new. And unfortunately, the responses by human behavior is also not new, and that's why people continue to fall to them, because the scammers always play on the human emotion. You know, in cybersecurity, we call it social engineering. So it's not about the technology. Whether they see you in person or whether they send you a message or they send you an email, the general idea is the same. They'll trick you into believing something, or they'll somehow coerce you into behaving in a certain manner that cooperates with them and plays into their hands. So that part is not new.
So the idea is this: people fall for the same scam because the behavior have not changed.
Yes, correct. And in theory, it's very easy. Even those people who were scammed, it's very easy for them to tell other people, like, oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. I mean, I give a silly example. I can teach you how to bowl, but how well I bowl by myself is something else. So, but when it happens to them, when somehow they get a message that, oh, you can make $1 million, or your son is in trouble, or you better do this within the next 2 hours before your bank account gets frozen, then it makes them panic, it makes them let their guard down, it makes them respond in certain emotional-based ways that they weren't supposed to even 5 minutes ago.
Anyway, we'll come back, hold that thought for a moment. We'll come back to revisit the profiles of the victims. But first, what are some of the most common scams in Singapore?
Okay, today I believe the subject matter we're talking about electronic scams, internet bond scams, or internet media scams. So, and the Singapore Police actually has listed a top 10, but actually if you look at them, they're quite fine-grained, you can lump them all together. So statistically, the number one, well, I'm not sure about after the bank incident, the statistics might change. But based on last year's police statistics, the number one scam is the e-commerce scams, and a wide variety of them. You buy something on the internet and something else goes wrong. And then there's also of course, the investment scam, the cheating scams, a bit like fraud or cheating or whatever, it's tied up with how you can make some more money. Or the third one is a love scam, where I think there's one story just a day ago or so about how this woman lost $1.2 million. Love scam, you get befriended, and then you get the confidence of the person, and then the person starts saying, I need money for this, or there's a new, and so on. So to make a long story short, it's what they call a love scam. And so on. There are a few others, like people pretending to be China officials, or someone tells you that you have COVID, you need to press this button, and so on. But anyway.
The common factor of all these scams is that unlike real crimes, these happen online.
Yes, correct.
So technically, there's nothing to worry about. You're not in any danger or whatsoever, because so long as you stick to some safe habits, safe online habits, the chances of you being hurt by such scams are actually very low. Because after all, the criminals are not knocking on your door. they prey on, yes, your activities, but technically there are certain ways to actually avoid all this.
Yes, correct. There is no physical harm or danger to this. So they are basically classified more like a white-collar crime. Yes, there's no physical harm, but again, that does not make it any less bad. But I suppose in that sense, ironically, it also lets the person gut down furthermore because this person is still interfacing electronically with the scammer. So, they feel a bit more confident and more easily they will get swayed.
Okay, then shall we look at the latest one involving the bank? What is your view on the profile of people who became victims this time around?
Okay, one of the things we notice in the latest profile of the victims is that they're no longer your stereotype uncle or auntie or heartland person who is not so tech savvy or not so English savvy, but these are all younger people, educated people, and some are even like computer engineers and IT people. So it's a very interesting change in the profile of people who were scammed. But we also feel that there's probably an answer for this, not a good answer, but see the young people today, although they're educated and IT savvy, they are impatient. They multitask, they do 5-6 things at the same time, they want an instant response, they don't bother to check. They're Googling for something, the page takes too long to load, they don't wait, they'll go do something else. And so again, the scammers are very clever. They're good psychologists, and like earlier on I mentioned the word social engineering. So they play on this. They know that the young people are impatient, they hope they don't check, they see something, they'll click, they'll respond, they want instant response, and that's how, again, the scammers take advantage of the emotional or psychological state.
Interestingly, the latest episode actually tells us that everyone is actually a fair game when it comes to scam. It's not just the elderly people, but young people as well. We have a reader who actually sent us a question and asked, how can they prevent their elderly parents from falling into scams? Actually, the idea is actually very simple. The way I see it is that if you want to prevent the seniors at home from falling into scam, tell them exactly what they told you when you were kids. Never talk to strangers. Especially when people call them on the phone or try to interact with them online, don't talk to strangers. If they need help, please consult their children, consult other people in the family. So the age-old advice of not talking to strangers and dealing with strangers is actually particularly effective when we want to ward off scammers online. Don't you agree?
Funny thing, I was just going to say the same thing. It's like, notice that this conversation right now has very little to do with the technology itself. So the same thing, when you were a child, your grandmother or grandfather tell you, don't do this, don't go there, don't fall in your drain, don't talk to strangers, and they usually... So today, we should be telling them, don't do this, don't do that. But I suppose, again, they respond because they don't understand the technology. They don't know, or they see this, or the bank say this, the government says that you must do this, you must do that. And again, that sense of fear, that sense of urgency, that sense of goodness and response is being taken advantage of. So unfortunately, young or old, the message is, unfortunately, we have to be skeptical. We have to be vigilant. We have to take a step back. It's like, okay, let me give a long-winded example. And then again, pertaining to young people. You want to, let's go and eat something, or let's go and travel, or travel is not a good idea, but VTL, let's travel to somewhere. What do? We start Googling, we search a Lonely Planet, or what, Hungry Go, where, how come when you get an offer of a scam, you don't research, you don't check, you email, respond, and then it's too late.
Anthony, following the bank scam, MAS and all the banks have worked up with and come up with various measures to supposedly tighten their digital banking. Some of these measures include setting the default transfer amount to be lower and making certain processes of changing particulars, delayed the process so that it does not become effective immediately. So what do you think of these measures?
Well, actually, there are pros and cons to these measures. I mean, first of all, of course, it kills the instant gratification thing. If I need to increase my limit or change my recipient, then it's going to take some time. Of course, in the past, it was like that. If I want to add a recipient, I had to go fill in the form at the branch and then wait 3 days and all that. And all that has become within seconds or minutes, which unfortunately has become a problem. So it's good because the scammer's not going to wait. The scammer's going to scam 10,000 people, and the first 10 who respond, he'll take. He's not going to wait for you unless there's a specific agenda. But the point is that it also causes inconvenience. in a sense that then the good people, or even the institutions, the MAS or government or IMDA, GovTech comes up with this requirement, that requirement, then it's the banks that have to comply. It's the people that are, so it's like the good guys are prejudiced and the bad guys continue to flout and get away with it and continue to send you messages that need to, that has a clickable link. But coming back to these measures, I like to point to one part about, and maybe I'm wrong, but I like to point to one part about lowering the default transfer rate. Typically, the default transfer rate itself may not be very high, maybe $20,000, but that's probably high. And you can always change it. It's so that you have to specifically change it such that it makes it harder for any fraudulent activity. But in going back to the OCBC case, so the other thing that surprised some of us was that the amounts transferred are relatively huge. It's scary. So, I mean, good for them that people have this kind of money in the banks, but at the same time, perhaps they had actually adjusted the transfer rate to a higher level. Maybe they're doing business, maybe they're doing securities trading, we don't know, but that may have, again, allowed the scammers to take advantage of the situation.
We discussed this topic earlier, even prior to today, and that we all agreed that actually the best defense to scam is actually ourselves. I mean, the banks and everybody can come up with lots of measures, but if you are the person who allowed the thief to enter your home, I think the effort is all pointless. Because having measures is almost like you allow the thief to come in and hope that somebody will catch the person before he leaves the home.
Correct, or before he comes, or when he comes to the home.
Because the idea is, let's say for example, if people think that because the measures are there, they become lax, they still click, they still provide the banking information. The funny thing could well be that the scammer already gained access to your information. They have made the change. Yes, the change may not take place immediately, but 12 hours later while you are sleeping,
or 3 days later, whatever.
They can still transfer the money out.
Correct.
And the best part is you wouldn't even know.
Yes.
Because you were wondering, wait, what happened? Because you actually allow the thief to come in and he's hiding there somewhere, waiting for the things to take effect. So the idea is actually to stop it and don't do anything that will compromise your security.
Yes, we need to take responsibility for that. A lot of people complain, they depend on the bank, they depend on the telco, the government, they expect them to do this. And what happens, if the government takes the action or the bank takes action, then people again let their guard down. Oh, I'm being looked after, you're right. And then they become complacent or lax. And meanwhile, when new measures are being brought in, whether it's by policy or by technology, you can imagine the scammers are already finding out how do we get around this, how do we find new ways to scam people. Okay, they also have research, they also have AI.
Let's talk about human behavior at this juncture. We talk about technology, but as we all know, there's only so much technology can do to help us if we don't help ourselves.
Correct.
On human behavior, one of the most worrying trend that's also hitting other than the phishing scam is the job scam.
Yes.
So people are targeting workers who are trying to find jobs, and yet in the process of doing so, they ended up being cheated of money. What do you think of this particular scam? Well,
first of all, I think that's very bad because those people are already in need. They need a job. There's no reason why they'll be looking for a job, and and again the scammers play on their need. I need a job, or I'm desperate. I need to pay bills. I need a new job. I need a job. And hackers or scammers play on their emotion again to pull them in. The part, of course, we need to be vigilant that we don't understand is, you're looking for a job, why do you end up having to part with money?
Correct.
Okay, so maybe along the way, there's some tricking involved to say you pay for this fee or make the investment or whatever, and somehow they manage to get the emotion of the victim to feel desperate enough to even borrow money to make that payment. So that part, they should see a red flag already.
In some of these job scams, I look at the process of the employment. What happened is that in some of those that involve e-commerce, the victims are asked to actually supposedly buy a product. The idea is to increase the sale for some of the vendors on that particular platform. So the idea is they're creating fictitious purchases, so to speak. And in the process of buying, they will lure you to say that, okay, you buy first, you buy $100, and then subsequently they pay you back $120. So you earn $20 in the process. But the whole process itself reeks of crime because, number one, you are being paid to actually artificially inflate a transaction that does not exist.
Correct.
Doesn't that signal that something is wrong somewhere, in the sense that yes, we all understand people need to find employment and times are bad, but shouldn't you stay away from any activity that should compromise yourself?
So you see, that's another thing. So that's another red flag. And I've seen such cases where people are scared, where the goods are real, but they're just useless or not very easy to sell, and people get stuck because someone else is trying to unload the dead stock. But the point is, you are looking for a job because you're short of money. Why are you willing to make a monetary investment and get caught in these things? Because the scammers play on another very key emotion, which is, I think, the most key emotion among all the scams, is greed. People want to make money fast. You have a multi-million dollar total, or so many people line up, like there's no tomorrow. So there's greed. People have not just a need, but there's a greed. I want to make money fast. Maybe I can do this and I'll be on time, on target. I don't need to go and work for, even I get a new job, I have to answer to this new boss. But if I make this business, I could make some transaction in my own time, in my t-shirt and shorts. So people are looking for that. Not necessarily, but the scammers play that into their minds. So again, it plays on their greed. So it smacks of crime, yes. But it's easy money, and that's where they get roped in. You invest $100, I give 120, or let's make it 500, I give 600 or 700, and then it becomes 4 digits, and it becomes 5 digits, and then
Complicit to this is actually this whole concept of money mules.
Yes.
In fact, last night I was doing some reading, and the police and the MAS are actually urging people to be careful. Don't let your bank accounts be compromised or used for money laundering processes. The funny thing is that some people still think that it's perfectly fine, because after all, I open an account, I let it use, somebody's going to pay me money.
Yes.
Again, what should we do when it comes to cases like this? Because in the first place, a lot of scams can only happen if they are accessories to the crime.
Well, first of all, again, the victim cannot be greedy, number one. Number two, there has to be due diligence, because it's very easy. We won't lend me your bank account. I use some long, complicated story about why I want to avoid tax or whatever. It may not sound legal, but it sounds plausible. Everybody would like to avoid tax, for example. And then I'll pay you X% of my business transaction, or I don't want my wife to see, or that kind of story. So there's some legitimate story. To you, it's nothing. Okay, maybe because I know you personally, it's different. But let's say someone who doesn't know you. First of all, someone doesn't know you, wants to borrow your bank account and pay you X% on it. Again, there are many funny things, red flags and grey flags. But again, it's the lure of easy money, passive income, and greed. And on top of that, no, you won't get into trouble. You get into trouble, I'm the one bear the trouble, not you. Well, of course, when the trouble comes, the person runs and the mule becomes the one facing the police.
Yes, actually, that's a good point you just mentioned, talking about trouble. Because one thing about technology and crime is that there's always a trace. And it goes without saying that we should always remember that crime does not pay. And for those of you who still think that it is easy money by just lending your bank account, the funny thing about this whole saga is that in case you missed the reports in the Straits Times, the police have been catching in large number people who have allowed their accounts to be used for such cases. Why? We should always remember that whenever we transfer money, there's always a digital trail.
Yes.
The digital trail can go from A, B, C, D. D, in this case, could be the mastermind and he's based overseas. Mm-hmm. But if A, B, and C are Singaporeans, you can almost be rest assured that A, B, and C will be caught.
Yes.
It's almost like, with all the CCTV that you find all over the island, you notice that the crime rate in Singapore actually has dropped a lot. But people forget that, in fact, the tracing done behind the scene when it comes to bank transfer is always there.
Yes, and C is not going to know how to identify D. So C, we left holding the...
Precisely. So A, B, and C, if you think that you can think that it's easy money, actually, it boils down that the mastermind may be difficult to catch because he's overseas. I mean, he may be unknown. There may be another EFG along the line, but certainly those who try to do it in Singapore, the A, B, and C, they will find themselves in trouble.
Yes. So it comes back to the original story. If a deal is too good to be true, it most probably is.
As in all online scam, most of it starts off harmlessly on the social media. And again, it's one of those things, people are so used to putting their whole lifestyle in the social media, and they put everything down there. What possible risk do people get if, let's say, they share too much of their personal information online?
Well, there are two pieces to this answer. The first is, of course, the information will be stolen and abused. People will try and use the information and do something in their credentials. Secondly, which is a newer one, which is scarier, is that people will take the information and find other pieces of information about them to collect, to build a whole new fake identity based on your credentials to go and commit crimes or go and commit fraud.
The cases of impersonation in Singapore may not be real, but I've done a couple of features recently, and it involved people impersonating real people from other countries in order to cheat victims in Singapore. So technically, if somebody can pretend to be, say, a rich man from overseas, and they use this persona to cheat victims in Singapore, if you are not careful, you allow much of your information online, people know who you are this particular business, you do this trade. Technically, you actually open up yourself to be used by scammer, your identity, to cheat other people overseas.
Yes,
the reverse.
Yes, you've given your profile away. In fact, after the article, I'm going to start to go social media and start removing all of my history.
The thing is, this is actually one aspect that is not quite common yet, but I think one of our roles is like, let's say in the media and as a cybersecurity officer, our job is to highlight possible trends that may hit us.
Yes.
And the way I see it is that the instances of identity theft, although still not a major concern right now, can turn out to be bad if you are not careful.
Yes, correct. And it's going to be increasing because electronic crimes are highly duplicable. You have one scammer doing this, another scammer will want to learn the same thing, and then it proliferates. And a lot of people also are complacent. No lah, who am I? It won't happen to me lah. I'm a nobody. That kind of an attitude. And then one day a car rental company will call them and say, you haven't paid the car rent for 3 months. What car rent are you talking about? And then because somebody had taken their personality to go and rent the car.
Yeah, actually I read a feature not too long ago in the United States where scammers over there are using people's identity to apply for government grants or social services. That means basically with just your name, name is easy, assuming that they can compromise, let's say they know some of your identity card number, they can always create a new email using your own name because after all, emails are free, and they can assume your identity and in the end, start doing things in your name.
Yes, correct. And one day when the time comes for you to withdraw your investment or find your social security fund is no longer there because someone else has already taken it. Well, thankfully, I don't think it will happen in Singapore. Okay, our system is very well built and stringent. But again, that's where the problem is. Because our system is well built and stringent, people become complacent.
This is actually what I see could be a risk that face Singaporeans, because everyone in the world knows that Singapore is a safe place. We have tough security. Our law enforcement is strong. So technically, it won't stop scammer from pretending to be Singaporean. It's because after all, you enjoy good trust, just like our passport. I mean, everybody knows our passport is valid in many countries. So scammers, because after all, it's online, they don't need to come here. The danger, in fact, I have seen some cases where Americans were told to send money to money mules in Singapore. So, and why did the guy actually allow this to happen? Because by their own admission, they say that after all, I'm sending to Singapore.
They trusted Singapore.
Correct.
Yes.
Because after all, if you tell people that the investment is based in Singapore, chances are people will lower their guard.
So again, it plays on the emotion. It plays in emotion to get the victim to lower their guard. See, so the whole thing is consistent. And you notice in this conversation, this whole scammer thing is consistent with phishing, which is also consistent with social engineering, where the scammer is trying to get you to do something, to impart information or do certain things which they can take advantage of your resources or make use of you to gain access to other resources. It comes back to this whole thinking. Again, we need to be vigilant, we need to be careful, or in Singapore context, we need to be kiasu, which somehow we're kiasu in the wrong ways, in the right ways, we're not kiasu enough.
One reader actually asked a very pertinent question. I mean, it's a bit generic, but all the more pertinent. He says, how do we avoid scams? Let's say, for example, investment scam. How do we identify what are investment scams? Actually, it boils down to in the first place, the point about who should you trust online. You know, we were talking about trust. We talk about when we go to a bank, sometimes when we ask for purchase of financial products, all our senses and self-defense actually go up when people try to sell your product face-to-face. But somehow, when it comes to online, the same caution seems to fly out the window.
Yes, exactly. You know, I mentioned this before. Someone from an insurance company tries to call you and sell, hey, Ewan, I'm from Greek. Someone, you're almost disdainful. Go away, I'm not free. But he's from a real company selling a real product that's highly regulated by the government. Now you have somebody whom you've never seen before, from a company you've never heard of before, trying to get you to part with $1 million in a scheme that you've never seen before, and you're very happy to go along with it. So you know, something is wrong there. Again, it comes back to how, like the reader's question, how do we prevent scams? You cannot prevent scams. Because, you know, if you stop 100 scams, there'll be 101st one coming up. You stop the 101st, there'll be 102nd one coming up. Again, it comes back to what you said earlier. We ourselves are our best defense. We ourselves are our best firewall, are our best safeguard. We need to do our what we call due diligence. You know, even if someone from seemingly real organizations, you need to go and find out from alternate sources. Do you know somebody there? Do you know someone who knows somebody there? Do they have a real building, a real office address, you know, a real personnel? Go check them out on LinkedIn. Do they have a history or the kind of thing? If they went to this, they worked for this company before, went to their school, now it's your time. Now your turn to go to social media to go and find out, do you know this guy? Does this other guy know this guy? Before you come to the conclusion whether you want to deal with this person or not.
What about this age-old advice that we get from our parents and grandparents? Don't talk to strangers, especially when this online stranger, he may be using different kind of persona, but obviously is somebody that whom you have never met. Yes. And yet, after some conversation, maybe a couple of weeks, the person starts to ask you for money.
Yes. So yes, you're right. It goes back to don't talk to strangers. And if you're doing business, you need to talk to strangers. Then have some idea of who this. You need some idea of who the person is. But it comes back to don't talk to strangers. Yes, even especially on social media. First of all, earlier on I mentioned that you're talking to somebody who you've never met. Now it's become worse. Is that person even real? Is that persona even real? They may be borrowing a combination of some other people's characteristics to make one persona to come and communicate with you, which is even scarier.
Maybe we take a pause back. Mm-hmm. Maybe not so much on just scams. Just talk about, let's say, cybersecurity in the business world. Yes, the pandemic has allowed many businesses to communicate with each other via Zoom.
Yes.
You're still talking about business-to-business talk. But at the end of the day, discussions that take place between businessmen, they are just talking about the terms and everything. When it comes to the actual thing, in many cases, people still meet face-to-face, especially with
and with a physical document.
With our vaccination travel lane, people are actually free to come to Singapore anytime. So would it be good advice that at the end of the day, even if you think that this is an investment or good business deal, you should always refrain from committing the deal online, but insist on meeting the person face-to-face if, after all, it involves a lot of money?
Well, if it involves a lot of money, and you can do that. Okay, this is a good point. Number one, if it involves a lot of money, it's only reasonable and fair. Let's meet. Number two is that then you can call a bluff to see how desperate is that person to cheat you. You know, after a while, that person might just say, you know, you're too hard to deal with, and then you've saved your money. In which case, then you know, you've saved yourself the trouble of getting into a scam.
So actually, what we have here is that even though we are talking about investment scam, to the reader's question, there's always a way to avoid it if, number one, you be extra vigilant when dealing with somebody online. Of course, you should be very, very careful when money is involved, because after all, even if you're talking about friends and everything, friends don't usually ask people for money. Friends will give you money if you're in trouble, but they usually
no, which is the other thing. When your friend or relative want to borrow money from you, it's so difficult. But again, a stranger you never seen before, you're so happy to part.
So this part about the online thing, you know, so people should really take note that when strangers show you concern online and later on money is involved, he certainly does not care about you. Because after all, I mean, in the first place, do you even know who you're talking to?
Yes, that's the whole point. Do you even know who you're talking to? So that part was never established. So I think the lesson from this conversation at least is established about, do you even know who you're talking to?
Before we go on, I think we cannot ignore there's an advent of a new technology in this case, that is cryptocurrency. In fact, cryptocurrency has crept into our sphere in a big time recently due to the meteoric rise in investment value and so on and so forth. And therefore, in fact, a check with some of the recent scams, many of them actually involve cryptocurrency. So what is your view about this whole Bitcoin and the fact that scammers are now stepping into the cryptocurrency sphere?
Let me think about how I frame it. There are many pieces to that because my university professor is big on this cryptocurrency thing. Well, my first point is this, again to be careful. Cryptocurrency is a favorite topic among scammers right now because it's new, it's exciting, it's high-tech, and it's little understood. So it's like 30 or 40 years ago when a man in the street is asked to invest in commodities. Oh, you know, like what, soya bean or I don't know what else is there, you know. But it's something little understood, but there's a lot of evidence that people are making money. Oh, so I want in on this. So they're using, again, the same tactic. It's not new. It used to be gold, platinum, precious jewels, you know, real estate development. You know, I'm building this new resort in Monaco. Would you like to invest in it? So again, the style is not new. The subject matter is new. And cryptocurrency is because there's a lot of excitement about how it went to 20,000 or 8,000 or people make money. But the thing is, it's not something understood. And again, it plays on the greed. I mean, I'm an IT person myself. I've been IT a long time. But I don't even know how to buy a Bitcoin if I wanted to. And yet for people, men in the street who's not even clued in on technology, so someone offers away, don't worry, I'll do all this for you. Just give the money, I'll give you a return, number one. Number two, they string the people along. You start small, never mind, 500, 1,000. Then you get some return. Oh, 1,000 become 2,000, become 5,000, then you get some return. Then again, the same old trick. Then push you to 10,000, then you start borrowing money and start selling the other assets just to feed this newfound wealth. Wow, you know, I'm a Bitcoin person or whatever. And then after that, when it hits 30, 40, 50,000 dollars, suddenly the whole thing either disappears or, oh, very sorry, we have a problem. The market take a dive. The truth of the matter is, even if you're not being scammed, the market can take a legitimate dive and you've lost it anyway too. So again, they play on emotion, greed, you know, something new, urgency. Oh, the market is running. Can I have 5,000 more, 10,000 more? Oh, you know, otherwise you know, they play on, again, the emotion. And because by then you already have 20 or 50,000 stuck inside, you don't want to lose that or you don't want to get stuck, then you go and feed it some more. And then it plays, so it shouldn't have started in the first place. Okay? Before anyone, and all these people, again, who are scammed, when they are invited to enter this kind of a scheme, do they even bother to Google what is the definition of Bitcoin 101?
You know, the points you made are actually very relevant, not just to Bitcoin, but in investment in general. I think it's always a good habit to stay away from any investment that, number one, that you're not so familiar with, and number two, there's always a high possibility, because it's something so new, verification will be tough. Because in some of the recent cases, it's not that the victims did not check. They actually did check. I mean, the company ABC did exist, but what they did not realize is they were trading on the clone website of ABC. So again, it's a totally new thing, you know. So MAS already cautioned to everyone that Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, is not a subject matter for normal retail investment.
Well, not only that, which is another point I didn't bring up earlier, that I should, it's very important. It is not regulated. Therefore, it means A, we don't know what's going on, and not regulated means if it goes down the wrong drain, the government will say, I have no recourse to this.
So basically, you know, on that note, we can always sum it up to say that sometimes one of the most obvious warning that we can get from scams and everything that concerns money is that if it's too good to be true, chances are it's not true. So anyway, thanks Anthony for joining us for this edition of askST at NLB. We hope you have gained some insights in our discussion, and most importantly, we hope that you'll be extra vigilant when strangers come to you online, and always remember what your grandparents tell you: don't talk to strangers, and don't give money to strangers online. Thank you.